Hi, everybody. I want to thank you for being here today. We're very excited to present to you the Student Leadership Summit Best Practices webinar. I have some fabulous guests with us today. My name is Colleen Nagan. I'm with ITE. I work primarily in membership and also help support our student chapters. Today we have two districts represented with long traditions of hosting student leadership summits. We have Kayla Fleskis Lane, and Kayla is a senior transportation engineer at DKS Associates based in Portland, Oregon. She was the chair of the 2018 ITE Western District Student Leadership Summit and has been the ITE Western District Student Funding and Initiatives Committee Chair for the past 5 years. So very active in our student activities out in the Western District. We have Sam Gregory. Sam served as the president of Cal Poly San Luis Obispo ITE. He was the president for 24 to 25 school year. He also assisted in organizing the 10th Western District Student Leadership Summit at Cal Poly SLO. So we're excited to have Sam with us bright and early, both Kayla and Sam. We also have Jasmine Hadi. Jasmine served as the president of Florida Atlantic University ITE Student Chapter for the 23-24 school year, and was also the Student Leadership Summit Chair for the 2025 Florida Puerto Rico Student Leadership Summit. So thank you very much for being here, Jasmine. And then we have Tua Wen. And Tua is the president of Via Planning, Inc. She's a member of our board of direction, ITE's board of direction, and is currently serving as the Student Leadership Summit Planning Support Committee Chair for the ITE Florida Puerto Rico District. I kind of skipped over our first slide here and got right into the introductions, but we do have a really great agenda today. We're going to be going over a lot of good information. This will be recorded, and we will be sending out a copy of the recording to everybody, as well as having a copy of this available on our district section chapter resource center. In addition to the recording, we'll also be sending out a copy of the planning guide that the Florida Puerto Rico District has developed, and a copy of our already existing Student Leadership Summit best practices. So with that, I am going to hand it over. Sam is going to kick us off today and talking a little bit about the history of the Student Leadership Summit, as well as the what makes up a Student Leadership Summit.
Awesome. Thanks, Colleen. And excited everyone's on here. So the first Student Leadership Summit was hosted here at Cal Poly in 2014. It truly was founded by students for students. At the time, our club president, Kaylin Pell, wanted to host this big conference. She wanted to invite hundreds of students to Cal Poly to learn about transportation and, as the name suggests, to learn about leadership. And our department chair at the time, who shall remain nameless, was a bit of a steamroller. She had a meeting scheduled with this department head and to discuss the plans for the upcoming summit, for the upcoming conference. And they sat down and he said, "You're not allowed to host this." And that was like how the meeting started. And so she said, "Why not? We have these plans. We have, 5 people on our team working on it. We have already sent out 100 invitations, blah, blah, blah." He said, "You're not going to be able to host a conference. This doesn't make sense logistically." And so she pushed back her chair and said, "Well, it's not a conference, it's a summit," and walked out of the room. And that's, I feel like, a great representation of where the energy of the Student Leadership Summit started. It was truly just a student-run initiative to bring folks in IT together to learn for a weekend. And I think it's continued to be that way for the 11 years since, as it's spread around the nation. I think a primary focus of the Student Leadership Summit beyond the transportation is the leadership, and by bringing in professionals and sponsors, it shows both the organizers and the attendees a lot of leadership development opportunities. And I believe it is now hosted, or I don't know if it's gone international yet, but it started, 10 years ago here at Cal Poly, and it's really exciting to see how it's spread and grown. I know just recently, in the Nevada district, they had their first student leadership summit, and it's super exciting to see it grow around the nation. So I guess I'd love to hear a little bit from Jasmine about the decision to host. When Cal Poly chose to host the Student Leadership Summit just a couple years ago, there was a group chat of all the presidents of the Western District student chapters, and they said, anyone want to host this next year? And everyone was like, oh no, we don't have the capacity, we can't do it. And so it kind of just became okay, I guess Cal Poly's going to do it now. And because we stepped up, I think it was a great uh, opportunity to learn and grow for our chapter. But I think there's other considerations to bring when you're choosing to host the Student Leadership Summit.
Yeah, I agree. For us, we have never hosted an SLS before, and for context, for Atlantic Universities in Boca, and we just started having like a more active student chapter. So we only had like maybe 30 active student chapter members that we had. And so the idea of hosting a conference was like, we have no one, like this is crazy. How are we supposed to find the people, have the members to host this event? And so the first thing that we did was we had a meeting with UF, which was a student chapter that hosted before us. And we just wanted to understand the lessons learned, their takeaways. And basically that gave us an understanding. And then on a personal level, I just finished being president of ITE. And so at that point, I was like, what else can I do? Like, how can I help out? And this was kind of like the perfect timing for me because I had the time. Um, and I really wanted to make a difference and also put our student chapter on the map because we were just new. But I will say like a big part of hosting an SLS is the buy-in from the members and your advisors because most of the time they might not even know what an SLS is. And so just getting informed and keeping everyone informed and knowing the time commitment that you're about to make is very important. Um, I was at my junior year, so I definitely had a lot of course load and also the FE exam. And so kind of understanding that it's a big time commitment, but it's also like a really important and like probably the best decision I ever made in ITE because it made me learn how to communicate, how to be a better time management student, how to be a better project manager as well. So all of these things really contributed to my experience. And
Oh, we lost your audio there, Jasmine.
oh, um, I don't know where I left off, but I can't recommend it enough. And I would recommend it to anyone who's interested in hosting an SLS to start by contacting the SLS before you, and then seeing their lessons and their takeaways, and then meeting with your group after.
And that really resonates with me, Jasmine, what you said. I don't want to underplay the amount of effort that it takes to host an SLS, right? It does require quite a bit of effort. But I also don't want to discourage student chapters that may feel like they're smaller or, don't have as much experience because I think they can host really strong SLSs, right? And I think SLS is also a great way to build up your student chapter, right? It really helps when you have something really like a specific goal and target in mind to be able to bring new members into the student chapter and be like, great, you can help us do this thing for SLS, right? Because I think sometimes student chapters, especially smaller ones, can struggle with building that membership and giving someone who wants to be involved, who wants to volunteer, something to do. And so SLS, there's a lot of things to do. So it's a really easy way to bring in more students to the student chapter and kind of build up your student chapter. So again, it's a good amount of work, but I don't want to discourage any small student chapters from hosting because I think there's a lot of opportunity here when you make the decision to host an SLS. So that leads to my slide here, thinking through roles and responsibilities of hosting an SLS. we're going to start here with the people who probably have the smaller roles, right? Student chapters. The student conference is led by students in the student chapter. So starting with section and district roles, right? While this is led by students, I was in the role at the Western District where I got to help support and lead student initiatives. And so I was more than happy to help students as they were hosting an SLS with anything that they might need. And that could involve, uh, assisting who's going to be the next hosting school, working through those introductions between the past planning team and the next planning team, helping identify potential speakers or sponsors. So if you have a specific idea, don't be afraid to reach out to your local section or district and say, hey, we want someone to be able to speak on XYZ topic, and use your network to build some of those resources, build up that agenda. And a lot of times districts will host specific events at SLS, whether that's a traffic bowl competition. So I think both Florida, Puerto Rico, and the Western District have done that in recent years, or other competitions or contests, right? We don't have to keep district events fully separate from the SLS. A lot of other districts too will kind of pair events intentionally with an SLS. So maybe there's an SLS one day and then the district meeting following that, for example. The section and district also has a lot of that kind of financial setup already in place. So if student chapters need help with, registration or working through some of the financials, that can sometimes be challenging, again, for younger or smaller student chapters who might not have those resources available locally at their university. And then again, more broadly promoting SLS and providing some of that support. So those are just a few of the roles of the section and district. Again, we're not the ones that's going to be hosting or doing much of all of the coordination. That's really on the student chapter. And so I'll pass it off to Tua here to talk a little bit about the faculty advisors as well.
Yeah, so of course, faculty advisors, and I should also expand this out a little bit. It's not just the single faculty advisor advising the ITE chapter, it's really the army that you have access to on your campus, right? So I would see them as the body of faculties that advisors and teachers and professors that you can tap into. And of course, the first thing is they probably going to be helping you form a group of you to say, okay, maybe you guys can co-chair because I know your workload. I also know that you're about to take the FE. So maybe, you guys can just combine effort on this. And another really great thing is that the faculties already knows who's on campus, what colleges are on campus, where the talents are, where the one that's a little bit more active, where's the one that could use a little bit of energy. Like Kayla mentioned earlier, it's a really great way of recruiting new members. They don't need to be ITE members either, but it's lovely when they get to kind of chime in and help. And as you know, many of your professors attend a lot more conferences, summit, workshop than you. So they are more likely to know someone who best to talk about AV. They know somebody who best to bring in to with a really cool car with the latest technology that in prototype that can talk to you guys about it. So it's really, really great network through them to help you. And the next item is I'm willing to bet that you haven't quite put together a meeting of this scale before, right? You might not have ever put together a budget. You might not know what budget item is reasonable. So wait, how much is for a hotel room? Most of the time you probably room with somebody. So you might not really know how much something really costs. Or is it reasonable to rent an event a venue for $500? Should we have asked that for free? And what do we need to do in order to get the space for free? Things like that. There's a lot of little items that your professors ought to be able to help you. And of course, the district intersection too. But this is a really fantastic way. And I give prop to Jasmine. She is absolutely fantastic. And we have some really great professor that work with her and give her hands and guide her along the way. And I'm willing to bet that many of the students on the call have that professors that you can go to, right? And I always remember Dr. Kreiser, he invited all of us to a dinner as a Greek restaurant. And it's this hidden family gem that I would have never been able to find myself. And I be honest, I've been there twice since. So it's a great way to feature a local business that a professor know. And he said, appetizer on me, guys, let's go for it. And it was such a generous offer. I know that not all professors will be able to do that. But I'll share with you another story. We had a professor that have Costco card. You can get some really good stuff at Costco. Without a card, you can't get in though. As a student, chances are you don't have a Costco card. You're not buying 18 rolled of paper towel, right? But hey, with a Costco card is great. And another one, we have a professor that have a minivan that was able to carry a bunch of things for us. It wouldn't, I had a $2 sedan way back in the day, and it's not gonna fit everything that we want to carry. So, giving asking for help is something that you guys are going to learn pretty early on, and offering that help is always really, really great. So we, for some of the professor online, and I see a couple of them, Jody included, prop to you guys. You guys to the student and continue to do so. And we truly appreciate you. I'm going to move on to the next slide, what I think is Sam.
Yeah, so thinking about how to plan an SLS, it takes a village. These events are in and of themselves a great part of the year when you choose to take on SLS. When Cal Poly hosted just a few years ago, we started off with two co-chairs, and we thought, okay, it's just a couple hundred people for a weekend. How hard can it be? And about a month in, we started recruiting for a third co-chair. And I think we ended up having four by the time the summit rolled around. So, we went in with sort of, we're Cal Poly, we can do this. But I think it's good to plan ahead and think about the different aspects that you're trying to emphasize as you host an SLS. Having a chair or a couple co-chairs as your point people to look to as the conference gets planned is of course super important. But having some subcommittees, I think, is something that our chapter has begun to adopt both for, day-to-day operations and for bigger trips and conferences. So we have some examples here. A couple of those are finance and fundraising. I can't stress enough how important and tiresome this part of planning SLS can be. It takes a lot of work to collect a group of sponsors. You have to do a lot of cold calls, a lot of LinkedIn messages, a lot of emails from the ITE contact database. If anyone has questions, we have more on that coming up. But I think that's a really great thing to emphasize with a subcommittee if your school has the bandwidth. And then also just more events focused, technical, non-technical, social events. These all play really important parts of SLS and frankly occupy most of the time that the students are visiting your campus. So it's important to really bolster those events. And communications and logistics, there's a lot of mailers that need to be sent out leading up to the summit. There's a lot of emails that need to be sent to sponsors, to the district, to the chapter, to your fellow clubs on campus and things like that. So having someone dedicated to sending out emails, creating mailers, creating flyers, or even nice graphics on Canva and things like that really takes the weight off. So as different schools have different numbers of students involved, I think our chapter has begun to focus more on these subcommittees to provide underclassmen with leadership opportunities that typically upperclassmen would be taking on. And I think having an SLS is a great way to delegate even more to first and second years if you have a lot of undergrads or younger master's, PhD students, to get them involved in ITE early, show them what it's all about, and bolster your club in years to come.
And
I
I
love
think
what
I'll
you
just
said, Sam.
briefly,
What I really appreciate is, do you know how you don't need every single chair. You don't need every single committee at all, right? So that's the first thing. This thing I like to share is this. I would capitalizing on people who good at that whatever it is that they do. So example Sam shared is great. If somebody who already great in Canvas, who can just whip up something really great and somehow magically put a bunch of word that I put in an email together onto this beautiful flyer and do a whole branding suite that so all of your document look exactly the same and created by somebody professional. You know what? You are my new communication chair, right? Or somebody who just wanted to be completely behind the scene, just wanted to do posts and really, really great about scheduling posts and scheduling reminders and things like that. Okay, if you don't want it to be the face, that's okay. Let's do that. Or someone then who good with money. I'm good with money. I'm not good with words. I'm really good with money. So I'm the treasurer, please. Give me the money. I can just track everything. I can calculate everything for you. I'll update you on the budget. I'll tell you how much you can spend or how much money we're getting in and out. Things like that. So really it's about capitalizing on the skill that each people have and say, I'm really not good at this. I don't know what I'm going to do. So find out more a little bit about the person interest and say, oh, wait, what did you say you like to do? Oh, okay. So you're really good at organizing and doing spreadsheet and doing tracking. Okay, how about logistic? Why don't I just have you do that? So that would be something I like to add. Kayla.
And I love that idea of playing to people's strengths when you're thinking about who should be on each of these committees or the chairs of each committee. I also think that there's something to be said for, having very clearly defined roles that are distinct from each other, right? So it's really clear. It's not two people trying to do one thing and it falls between the cracks, right? There's an expectation that they're going to be the lead in charge of this thing. And it gives them the opportunity to really step into that leadership role, like Sam was saying, even if it's an underclassman who can, step into that leadership role. I think that's really, really valuable as you're thinking about that structure for an SLS planning committee.
But before I forget, at sometime during this webinar or after, we certainly would love to share with you the SLS handbook that we put together, and it does have really defined roles. And you don't have to have all of them. It's every university, every chapter could be slightly different, but we'd love to share that with you.
So for developing the program, it has a lot to do with the audience. So for us, we had a mix of undergraduate and graduate students, and we wanted to develop a program that did not just cater towards one or the other. So a lot of the students that came to our event had no experience, some had multiple internships, some were looking for entry-level positions. And so it's a lot of factors that come into play when deciding what type of events that you want to have. Also having a mix of team building and professional development. So people don't want to be in like a classroom setting the whole day. It gets tiring. And so kind of breaking that up with social settings, the ability to kind of put in breaks as well, really helps keep the energy up so people don't get tired, because I'm sure no one likes to sit in a room for a long amount of time. I also believe that the advertising component of this is really important, and understanding the algorithms in social media. So if you do use LinkedIn, which I really suggest you should, understanding when people are going to be the most active and the ability to use hashtags and tag interested parties, I think that really helps as well. We also had a MailChimp, so we could send out the newsletter, and then in that newsletter we had the program, so people could really see what they were going to get themselves into. And then just to mention, we use Squarespace, which is a website, and it was a really helpful tool that we use to kind of like keep track of all of our registration numbers and stuff. So then on the day of, we had like order numbers and everything really kept us organized. So kind of like using LinkedIn to channel that clicking action into your website can really help, and making sure that you're keeping everyone informed on everything that you're doing, and also creating flyers. So for every single session that we had a custom flyer made, and we tagged the speaker, and then they could share that to their network. And so kind of making sure that you're always on people's minds all the time, getting people interested is probably the best advice that I have for the marketing component. I'm going to pass this on to Kayla.
Yeah, and I really love, Jasmine, that you talked about that communication piece of developing the program, because you could have the best program in the world, but if you aren't communicating it to your attendees, then it's like it doesn't really matter, right? So really thinking, it's one thing to set up that program, but how you're communicating it out. I'll also share a story USC hosted several years ago, and they, are down in sunny California, and so they planned a lot of their activities to be out in their plaza space on campus. And then last minute had to pivot because it was raining that weekend. The one weekend that we had SLS, it was raining. And so they already had the communication infrastructure set up and in place to be able to communicate those changes to attendees. So we were getting emails, notifications of like, hey, we've changed locations. It's no longer out in this plaza. Please join us in this, building conference room, classroom instead. And so having some of that structure set up beforehand will also make it so that you can be more flexible and pivot if you ultimately have to. So I really love that. So if we go to the next slide, I've got a sample program here based on kind of a combination of our experiences at the Western District in Florida, Puerto Rico. You don't have to do this program, right? Again, this should be led by the students. And so thinking about what's something that you want to maintain from past SLSs, build upon that history versus what's something that you want to do that's new this year, right? Some of my favorite events that at the, 6 SLSs that I've been to have been the differences between them, right? Something that's very uniquely, UCLA or Cal Poly SLO, right? So don't feel like you need to fit yourself into a certain mold. We've also shown 2 days here on the screen at the Western District. A lot of times, really, that's a half day on a Friday, full day Saturday, and a half day Sunday. Some chapter or some districts will host just a single day conference. So really, you can make it your own and fit the program to meet your own needs. One thing I do want to point out with this sample program, though, that I think is really helpful and critical is on that day one, or maybe it's if you're only doing one day, it's the morning, right? Doing something that is a little bit more fun and gets students a chance to interact with one another outside of their university. I think that's one of the most valuable things you can get from a student leadership summit is that connection between universities. And so having that networking reception or something that can get people interacting with one another a little bit more, I think is really critical. Back when I was a student and we hosted at Oregon State, there's a bowling alley on campus in our student union. And so we rented out the bowling alley and had our networking reception on Friday there, and set up a little game that kind of forced people to, not sit in the same lane as students from their student chapter, right? And then had a raffle afterwards if you were participating in this game, right? So kind of incentivizing ways to connect. I think especially early on in the conference is really helpful because then you're spending the next, day and a half with these same people again. So, having already made some of those connections early on in the conference, I think is really, really helpful. And then the other thing I'll point out about this example program here, right, is again, that connection between the district and the student chapter that's hosting. If you want to do something like a traffic bowl, right, coordinating with your district early to make sure that you have all the equipment, all the volunteers that you need to do something like that, I think is really helpful. And thinking about where that best fits into the program relative to a lot of the other sessions that you want to do. So those are just a few thoughts here on the program. Anything else the panel wants to add
that.
here?
Yeah. No, I'd like to highlight one other things, and this is so useful. So I say one other thing, and then I already thought about 3. So let me just jump right in. My apologies. So you know how the very first day we tried to do resume review, and I don't want it to intimidate student either. Some student, to be honest, they never had a resume before. So we, on the first day, we met somebody that just said to us, like, I don't have a resume. And I said, okay, can we jot down a couple of things? And you guys, what I love so much is that everybody was surrounding this person and said, hey, dude, you also work with me on this project. This is what I write about that project. Do you want to take some of the notes? And by the next day, he has 80% resume ready for the career fair. It's not the best, but you got to have to start somewhere, right? And I love that. And another success story I like to share is we had just, different universities talking. And the next thing you know, 2 different university from 2 different students from 2 different universities collaborated and co-wrote a paper without that conversation, it wouldn't have happened because, as you can tell, a lot of the meetings you are being talked to, right? You will have an expert to come in and talk to you about time management, and you just heard it, and then you take notes, and then you went off. But you don't get to talk to each other. And sometimes you stand next to somebody for photos, and that's about it. So that networking is incredibly important for you to get together and just like really, really build that collaboration so that it would help you down the road. So on the next slide, I'll share with you some of the topics that is non-technical. What we have heard quite a bit is, oh my gosh, I have enough technical conferences. I go to this ITE meeting, I go to TRB every winter, and I go to ASCE conference, and I'm doing canoe, and I'm like, this is just so much, and I just can't do it. So we're like, all right, so what is it that you like to learn that you have not yet get to learn? And we collect this list throughout the years, and a lot of folks will come to us and say, I have never managed a team before. I don't know what to tell. I don't want to be bossy. Okay, leadership development. This is what it is. And you don't even have to have a speaker to come and talk to you about how to have teamwork, to learn about teamwork. You're just gonna practice, and if you run into trouble, and by way of, well, this person said he's gonna do this by this day and he disappear on me, what do I do? Okay, now let's talk about how you can address that situation, right? And this is where your professor is gonna be great, your teammate, your committee chairs, your co-chair for your SLS. These are the people that you're going to be able to kind of brainstorm and say, so that Sam, he said he's going to get this done and he didn't, and I understand he has a meeting, but come on. So have you talked to Sam? And if I haven't called Sam, it's on me. I need to call Sam. I mean, hey Sam, did you know that I sent you an email, and if Sam never got my email, then okay, that's why Sam didn't do it. It is very unlike Sam to not respond, right? So this is how you learn. Okay, Sam never does this before. Something is wrong, or it went into spam, or Sam sent it to me that I didn't get. So this is great communication. And a few other topics that I like to highlight is like time management, conflict resolution, technical writing. This is something that we've been asked for quite a bit. One of my youngest staff came and said, I don't know how to put that together. So I said, okay, talk to me and tell me what you wanted to say, and how about if we structure the sentence this way? Or I'll read something he wrote, and I say, is this what you meant? I don't think so, right? So let's see if we can revise that. So that is a really, really great one. And I'll share with you one of my favorite. I didn't think it was my favorite at that point, but we had a yoga master come in and help us. And I'm thinking, we're not going to get yoga mat guy. Like, what are we going to do? It's afternoon, and that's a really big lunch. I'm going to just fall asleep after this. But the yoga master taught us how to calm down, how to breathe, how to just put things in perspective, take off our shoes, put our barefoot on the floor, connect with the earth. And until today, I still use some of the technique that he taught us. It's just really just a moment to calm down. Everything is going to be fine, right? Just stress management. And it's one of those skills that you're going to carry with you either in school, through your work, in your personal life and beyond. So realistically, a lot of the skill that we're trying to teach you at the SLS is something that we hope that you can carry with you. So similarly, if anybody on the call that have another topic that you love to learn about, or you have learned about that would like to share with us, let us know. We'd love to be able to include some of that information in the best practices. And I know Colleen mentioned it earlier, but ITE has a best practice guidebook, a short and easy to read guidebook. And through this conversation, we're going to add a few more of those onto that book for you so that we can all learn together. And let me see. I think this one is also me. Let me just make sure. Yes. So I know I mentioned already about reaching out to different colleges within a university. But one thing I wanted to remind you guys is that most of the time there is a career resource center. It could be called something different. It could be career connection center, resource, human resource department, however the center might be called. Those guys are wonderful folks, and they will be able to help you with how to put a resume together, how to prepare for an interview, how to write a cover letter, what should your LinkedIn profile has and what it shouldn't be having, what sort of picture should you have out there, how do you
Welcome to
phrase
Dunkin's.
something?
Pumpkin's here. How can I help you?
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. And one thing that I wanted to remind you guys is, let's say if you looking for somebody who take photographs, for example, right? Let's say somebody who take photograph for your event. And yes, you can pay $500 for a photographer who come in for 2 hours and take photograph for you. But if there is a photography school, you can come and say, okay, does anybody needs a portfolio? Does anybody need to put a class project together? Or you can talk to the professor and say, could you recommend somebody for us? So the person can get to attend for free, first of all, and a small thank you gift. And yet the person get to take the picture for you, get it edited picture for you. And it's a way to learn as well. And I'll tell you, Jasmine, I become the best friend with the photographer that we had because she was so kind. She posed us. She said, okay, you ladies do this, don't do that. Make sure you put your drinks down. Make sure you stand this way. No, come forward because the light is shining on your face. And I so appreciated that. And she loved us as well because she's like, I didn't know that's ITE. I didn't know anything about what you guys do. And you guys are so cool. You guys are the cool of the engineers. And we're like, well, we're telling everybody that before. So another thing that you might want to think about is leveraging other partners. And by that, I meant this. Let's say if you, if a company that have a really great conference room and they are publicly traded company, they're unable to write you a check for something, right? Even if they couldn't do that, but they say, hey, if you guys wanted to host a reception in our conference room, we'd love to have you. Take up on it. That's great. And I know for a little while, Atkins, shout out to Atkins, they printed all of the material for us because they have this amazing print shop, an amazing print shop keeper who just does a fantastic job. And she said, send everything to me by this day. I'll let you proofread it one more time and then I'll print it out for you. And those print jobs could cost you quite a bit of money. So they are great about it. Or they would give you tips and hints that, that yellow isn't going to print very well. And that one isn't going to be very good because it's too close to the door. So maybe you can change to a different color. So this is amazing just knowledge that you might not know otherwise. And it's a really, really great way to learn. And last but not least, once in a while, we'll have somebody with a prototype of a new technology that you might not be aware of. And if they can't come and speak to you in person all the time, they can send the equipment. Like I think the very first time that I saw a Tesla was at one of the conferences. I'm like, what is this with the door going up and everything? That was really super cool. And hey, I am not beyond, showing cool gadgets to get more people to be a part of our group. So, so what I encourage you to do is think beyond ITE, things a little bit broader. And I'm hopeful that it's just going to get that much better for your next SLS.
Which is a great transition to my next slide here, right? Thinking beyond the School of Engineering. Not everyone knows about ITE. If you can help use other organizations, other professional development focused organizations, for example, to expand your reach, whether that be using them to help advertise, maybe to students outside of your own student chapter, or schools that you might not necessarily usually reach out to because they don't have an ITE student chapter. Maybe they have an ASE student chapter and they'd be interested in knowing what's going on at SLS. So you can use these groups to help you advertise. You can use these groups to help you maybe get more volunteers too, right? So partnering with your local ASE student chapter as you get closer to the event to help just have more volunteers and bodies on campus as you're trying to, direct people to the right room spaces, for example. And then I think also, these are thinking beyond just your typical engineering, allows you to bring in different perspectives to some of your like technical content, your agenda as you're setting it up, right? So to have mentioned, having, technical content, non-technical content that is maybe more applicable to other groups, help expanding the reach of ITE, I think is really important as you're thinking about what you want your SLS to be and look like. And so transitioning now here to probably the thing that feels the most challenging as you're getting started doing an SLS, right? There's a lot of things you have to put down payments for, deposits for, and so getting the sponsorship and fundraising right can be really intimidating. So maybe Jasmine, you could speak a little bit about your SLS and what you all did there.
Yeah, so this was the most intimidating part for me. Our SLS was in February and we started fundraising in September. So we had never fundraised like a big event before. We just started getting sponsorships for our student chapter on the annual level, and we only raised like $5,000, and that's obviously not going to cover an event of this nature. So after, just to give you an idea, we raised $20,000, which I think was a really significant accomplishment on our part, especially since everything was new to us. The most important thing I can say is to create a package that will kind of make the company or the consultant or the sponsoring entity like interested. Like, what do they get? Kind of listing that out, which I'll show you in the next slide. But kind of playing into a role is like, what would they get out of this, and how can we make it worth their while, especially if like these companies are giving you money. So when it comes down to money, you want to show a list of like what they're going to get from it, kind of like a business deal. Sponsorship does not always have to be money related, so they can support or supply lanyards, tote bags. I know with Tuha, she helped us a lot in kind of getting different contacts, because a lot of times we don't really know that many people. So reaching out to your district for a contact that they might have of someone that's really good at providing lanyards for their event. So we got our lanyards provided by Health, and that's all they provided, but that like significantly helped us and reduced the pressure on us finding lanyards ourselves. They can also sponsor a reception or a specific session or a tour. As well, on the left, you can see there's a photo of our tier. So we had diamond, gold, silver, and bronze. We also had a personalized option. So for the diamond, they would get everything, and they would also have 3 representatives attending. So we really wanted to encourage professionals to attend, because that way students could really network with professionals that were there. And so this is how we did it. We kind of looped it together. You will have to email a lot. You might feel annoying at times, but it's part of the process. And like Sam said earlier, cold calling and LinkedIn like messaging all the time. I feel like I was on my phone for so much during that time. I was always connected and making sure that I was always responding back to emails. But this is also something that your fundraising officer will take care of. So delegating and making sure that you choose the person that enjoys that, because a lot of people do enjoy fundraising and keeping track of money. This was a great experience, and although we had a smaller student chapter, I feel like specifically the fundraising portion really taught us a lot about how to budget, and how to kind of keep track of money and how much you have coming in and out. I know Sam, Cal Poly has a larger ITE student chapter, so if you want to kind of touch on your experience.
Yeah, I was elected president in spring of 2024, and my big plan was to take the first half of the summer for myself and then start working on ITE. And 2 weeks into my summer, we got notice that our budget from the school had been cut by 80%. So all of a sudden, we went from, okay, I'll start goal setting later to, oh, we need to start making a sponsorship packet now. And it took a lot of hard work. I think this packet shown here is a great representation of some of the ways to get sponsors involved with SLS. Really, the thought process I took to getting money back from sponsors was they want to hire people. They want to hire good engineers. They want to have people join their team. And we need to incentivize them to do so. So whether that means bringing them in to, help with resume reviews and mock interviews so that they can see which students they might like to hire in future summers, or or, bringing them in for presentations. There's just a lot of different ways to get sponsors involved that would, be a more long game payoff for them. And I think that transitions nicely into some of the lessons learned we have from SLS. I love that some lessons learned, it's like SLL, right? And then we, just right in the home stretch here. So anyways, I think I'd love if everyone could take 30 seconds and drop one word in the chat that they think a good leader exemplifies. While you're thinking of those, I'd like to tell a story about a moment. A shout out to UC Berkeley for a moment of good leadership from their chapter. As I mentioned, when I was the president of our Cal Poly chapter, we were on a shoestring budget, and Berkeley was starting a new conference called the Interdistrict Transportation Competition. And they really wanted Cal Poly to show up because we bring the fun. And so they kept emailing us and saying, hey, we'd love to have you here. And we kept saying, sorry, we just don't have the money. And so finally they said, hey, do you have sleeping bags and sleeping pads? Because if so, you can sleep on our apartment floors. That's, we'll host you if you can make it up here. So we said, okay, yeah, we can probably swing that. So we all drove up in our two, little carpools and slept on the floor. And then on the first morning, they had, for breakfast, they had Costco muffins and bananas and things like that. And it was like, okay, this is a classic, easy breakfast, get a lot of students fed. And then lunch rolled around and they brought out Costco pizza. And I started thinking, okay, maybe they're on a little bit of a budget too. And they said, don't worry, guys, for dinner, we're going to have something fancy. And then dinner rolled around and they brought out Panda Express. And I was like, okay, this is not something, leadership cannot be bought. Every one of these words that y'all have just dropped in the chat, empathetic, resilience, understanding, delegator, these are things that humans do and things that, however much sponsorship you recruit, you'll never be able to grab those unless you bring the leadership. So I think that's a really important part to remember with SLS. I also think delegation is extremely important. My big three, I chose to make my three jobs when I was the president of our chapter. First, to set goals, and then to delegate, and then to show up. And I realized when I started, planning ahead that I would never have to plan an event if I did those three things well enough. If I set goals well ahead of time and told my super excited officers what I had in mind, they would just make it happen. And I think trusting those around you and delegating, but also bringing a lot of energy and leadership and enthusiasm to starting early is a really important idea. So that all applies to how you plan your Student Leadership Summit and some other lessons learned. I think if you focus on the leadership, as we mentioned earlier, that is the central thrust of this summit. And, transportation, we hear about it all the time. Every student chapter that's visiting your Student Leadership Summit has their own technical presentations on a, monthly or weekly basis. So bring something new, bring in a yogi, bring in, some sort of leadership development that people can really take away from and remember forever. That's what I've gotten the most out of these Student Leadership Summits. Any other lessons learned from the other panelists? SLLs? Any other SLLs?
That's a really good summary, Sam. I think the only thing that I will, re-emphasize from what you said, right, is that idea of starting early. It's a lot of work to get through an SLS, so setting those milestone targets as you go to make sure that you can stay on track becomes really important. Starting early also gives you a little bit more flexibility on things, right? So you can even set up your budget with the idea of, if we raise a certain amount, here are basically our must-haves, here would be nice-to-haves, and here would be, great additions that aren't really necessary, right? So as you start to hit some of those budget milestones, you can start adding more and more value to the conference, right? So you start with the idea of, it's going to be a Panda Express meal. But if you've started early enough, if you've gotten enough registration, enough sponsorships, maybe you're upgrading that by the time it gets closer. And you can really only do that if you're starting early, because otherwise you're just going to be running up into deadlines where you have to be paying for things and setting, formal agreements in place. So that would be my biggest recommendation for folks who are trying to host a student leadership summit.
Yeah, my only other one that I would say is be flexible. Things gonna happen, right? Um, so we had an SOS that I think 2 days before the keynote speaker decided that I should be nicer. The keynote speaker has a conflict, so the keynote speaker was not able to make it. So of course, as you can imagine, it was like, what are we gonna do? This is awful. But I'll tell you, as professional, when you have to pull out the last minute like that, you feel really guilty. And you know what? I work with the guilt. So I called a person and said, "I'm so sorry that we're unable to host you. Is there someone that you would be able to send?" The person said, "Yes, absolutely." I sent my second in command. He's great, and he was great, to be honest. So a lot of the time it's fine. Everything will be okay. And I think the key is just monitor the budget a little bit, and we can just adapt and adjust, from there. It's always nice to be able to have a little bit of cushion so you don't have to balance the budget to the pennies, right? I understand that. Um, and Colleen, if it's okay with you, I see a couple of questions coming in, and the first one I thought was really great. There's a few folks asking the same question already about accommodation. So what I would recommend is for you to potentially look into one or two hotel nearby and come and talk to them and said, "Hey, this is the day that we're going to have the event." And of course, this yet another really great lesson to not host something when there is something huge. And by that, I mean this. Let's say if World Cup is coming, right? We are avoiding World Cup. We just simply not doing anything. The hotel going to be impossible to get. Or if down here we have a boat show on air show, we avoid those days for sure. So we try to pick the weekend or the couple of days that would work. You come and talk to one or two nearby hotel, and you said, we could have up to 20 people staying in a hotel room, which there be an opportunity for us to get a group rate of some sort. Do not sign a contract, do not make any commitment. And what you wanted to tell them is, okay, so $150 or $250, whatever that is, okay, that's great. And we'll let you know a week in advance, so 3 days in advance if we don't need the room rate, so you can release to general public. Meaning you're not make any commitment to pay for those rooms, and do not pay for anything in advance. And most of the folks will be able to set up the room themselves, So what you would do is pick a few of those, send a link out if there's a code, and send a code out. But then everybody can pick their own room. And so one or two things happen for a professional like us. If I'm going to travel with my good friend Catalina, I'm like, "Hey, do you want to just split the room?" Awesome. You book and we split the room, right? We do that all the time. Or if someone who come in and say, "Hey, I want to stay for a couple days extra," they can book their own room. And for some student, it's like, "You know what? I'm going to bring my in-laws. I'm going to bring my husband as well. So why don't we just stay in the bigger rooms and stay this week?" Or what happened quite a bit is 4 or 5 of you going to get a rooms that you're going to share. So 2 people can share the room. There's a couch. Somebody bring a sleeping bags, and you guys do delivery offline. So that's what I would recommend. Do not worry about it. Make a couple recommendation and leave it to that.
And I would agree that the travel is definitely the biggest cost of SLS. So if there are things you can do to help reduce that, whether that be in who's hosting an SLS, right? So we had a lot of conversations when we were hosting at Oregon State. Corvallis is not close to any major airport, right? So everyone is going to have to either fly into Portland and then still drive an hour and a half, right? Or a lot of people chose to drive up from their university or down, which is a long day of travel. And so trying to be really intentional when you set that registration fee, because that is one piece that you have a lot of control over as the planning committee, right? Is what's that registration fee for students? really trying to minimize that as much as possible, and potentially even offering like a sliding scale for your registration. So is there a need-based version where you're going to bring it down to, at cost or even below cost and helps subsidize some of those registration costs through sponsorships that you can get? That's one way to help manage some of that, because some of the other things, it's harder to control, right? What the flight is going to cost from Southern California up to Oregon, for example, right? So minimizing the things that you do have maybe more control over can be helpful.
And when you pick hotels, some hotel will give you free breakfast, which is really helpful. So you can then start your program a little bit later. So for those that who came the morning off, those are the only one that gonna basically need to have breakfast. And then the rest of the folks would have had breakfast as their hotel before they get to you. So that saves you a little bit of a cost as well.
There's some more questions in here too, and I want to hear from Sam and Jasmine as well, and make sure that we get through kind of these questions. So, could each of you share how many attendees were at your meeting?
Yeah, when we hosted 2 years ago, we had just over 200. I believe when UCLA hosted last year's Western District Summit, they had just over 300. So those are our numbers.
When we hosted, we had 150.
Okay, great. And then can you share, do you remember kind of like the total budget for each of your events, just to kind of give people an idea maybe of total, with the understanding how many people were there?
I think for our side, it was like 15,000. That was like our goal, and we ended up going over 20,000. But I also think it kind of depends on your location because we're in Boca. It's pretty expensive here, and that really does play a role. If you're in more of like a rural area, I think it'd be different.
I can't remember our numbers anymore, but we were pretty similar range in that, shooting for 15, maybe spending a little more.
And I would say don't be afraid to reach out to past SLS's hosts to get the actual budget, actual spreadsheets. Everyone's totally willing to share that information with you. So either from past hosts within your district, because that's maybe more local comparison, or if you don't have a past host to be able to reference, ITE International lists all of the hosts of SLS. So reach out to someone else outside of your district just to get some of those comps or understand at least the number of things that you should budget for and plan for as you're setting up your budget spreadsheet.
And I think this is a good question too. So related to the sponsorship, how did you actually receive that money for the sponsorship? And Sam and Jasmine, can you speak to that?
So for us, we had a bank account, just our student chapter bank account that was made the year prior because we had just started. And then we allowed for companies to either Zelle us the money or they could provide a check addressed out to our student advisors, like mailbox in the College of Engineering. And then every week we'd just check the mailbox and hope there was something there. But it was really easy to keep track, and then it would just go into an Excel sheet, and it was really easy. I really
For us, Cal Poly has a lot of clubs and very rigid systems for how they receive money. So it was all entirely through the school, through a digital account. That's where all of our money came in.
And
Yeah, so recently, Colleen, we have a university that their bank account was so limiting they couldn't receive money. So we basically set up a registration platform using a platform. It's called Zephy, Zeffy.
Yes.
And for Zephy, it's free if you don't make a donation. You don't have to make a donation. And so what happened is that the money would come in through them and add into an account. And it could be PayPal, it could be Venmo. So the money kind of sit in there and they only transfer the money over to their account when they need to use it. So it's a really great way to kind of hold the money in between. The spending and the taking in money.
Yeah, and Kayla, you put in two really important points. So number one, every university is going to have different rules related to kind of accounts and money, and some may be really strict and some may be less restrictive. And for those that are less restrictive, this may be an opportunity for where districts and sections can help support that process. We've seen some districts kind of play the role of bank for the student chapter, and just kind of pass through the money, and that has worked well as well. This one
Yeah, because
last
there's some
question.
tax implications too
Yeah.
of setting up your own separate account. So just make sure to check with university policies first.
Yes. And then I think there was one last question I do want to touch on right before we break today, but it was, how do you begin to bring up the idea of an SLS? And is there a platform way to reach out to other student chapter leaders? And as far as reaching out to other student chapter leaders, I think the districts and also ITE can help tell you who those other student chapter leaders are. But maybe, Sam, Jasmine, if you want to just touch on again, kind of how you go about kind of, bringing up this idea of hosting an SLS.
In the Western District, you get you're introduced to SLS at a young age, and then you meet everyone and you grow your network. And by the time it's your turn to host, you sort of already know who's going to be visiting, and you already kind of know everybody else. I know that might not be the case in other districts, so I think working with the district is a really great idea. But Jasmine, I'm sure you have some good thoughts.
Yeah, on our side, I think we didn't really know who's going to host it, I believe, and so I kind of heard of discussions happening at the ITE, like the district meetings, and so I was like, oh, I think you can do it. You want to do it? And then they were like, oh, we need someone to do it, and it just worked out. But yeah, it was our first time hosting, so just the idea of it in general was pretty scary. But getting informed, and then also I contacted Chuha, which was our representative, and she really helped us getting in contact with UF, which was the school before, and also the manual, I don't know what it's like actually called, like the report that was made by Chuha and the SLS team, the planning committee can really walk you through every step. And then you can always reach out to your district, IT International. There's so many tools available for you. You just need to make the decision, and then it'll be the best decision you ever make, and you'll have the best conference ever, and I highly recommend it.
Well, listen, I want to, give just a round of applause to all of you today. Thank you so much for participating as panelists and sharing your experience in hosting student leadership summits. We will be following up today with a copy of this video, as well as some additional tools that we think will help any of you if you're ever interested in hosting a student leadership summit. And, if you have additional questions or anything, you are welcome to contact me directly. But I'll also provide the contact information for our panelists as well, so that if you have a specific question about something that they talked about, or just want some more information, they are excellent resources and great people to reach out to. So thank you so much, everybody. I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you.